All right, the Bucks. It is Talking Buccaneers with me, Fumane, before the mighty Bucks take on Polokwane City, or Polokwane City take on the mighty Bucks. And say what you will about their football, which I will in a bit talk about their football. But it has been efficient so far, and it has yielded for them a season they can be proud of. They sit only 4 places beneath us on the log, I think. But there's very little to separate us. We are, I think, only 2 points above them. They've had a very, very good season, especially away, picking up some really important results. Recently, before the end of last year, they got a draw against Mamelodi Sundowns. Very stubborn and not allowing Sundowns to get a goal in that game. They got a draw against us at Tulanda Stadium. I remember an important win for them at SuperSport United, winning 4-1. So they sit, at 9th place, but there's only 2 points to separate us. And so I don't predict an easy game. Not just because of the places on the log, even though that's important, but having watched them, I think they're not an easy team to play against. They're very stubborn, they're very compact, and they allow you the ball. They usually actually press with 2 people up front. Their big man up front, Mafumo, is the one who will press, and then one of the wingers, especially the left wing, whether it's Apollos mainly who plays on that left side. At times it's Ramabu who plays on that side. So those 2 will be the first press, but they will not press, aggressively and try and get the ball off your center back, so that sort of thing. So they'll allow you to have the ball in front of them and pass it around, which at times does make it very easy to get past them, their first line of pressure, and get into that middle third, where you then try and build an attack. Create opportunities, but as soon as you get into their half, that's when they start to, try and win the ball back, and they're very compact. The midfielders do tuck in and form, a midfield 5. So usually they play a 4-5-1. Workman-like midfield with Kambala sitting in front of the back 4 as a defensive midfielder, and then they'll usually have 2 central midfielders. Mashiginya is one of them. Most of the time he's playing, and then they'll play Rampadu or they'll play Van Heerden in that position, and it's a very workman-like midfield, although Mashiginya is the one who will at times be the one who tries to create something for them, even though that's on the rare occasion. But, in the sort of easier fixtures in the league for them, Rampadu is somewhat of the playmaker for them. However, in this game, I do predict that they're going to be sitting in. Their approach, their football is, the simple football that the easiest kind of football that any team can play, which is to kind of go direct. So they've got a big man up front, Mafumo, I think he's Zimbabwean, very big. They do try and use his stature, they do try and use his size to hold the ball up for them, to fight for scraps and that sort of thing. And then they've got Apollos as the left winger, who's I think their best player by my account anyway. I think he's the one that's very tricky and has got a goal in him. So they'll try and get him in and around that space where Mafumo is fighting that dogfight with the centre backs and the defenders, and try and build off something like that. I think in this kind of fixture, that'll be their approach. Although, I want to be fair. I want to pay all due respect to Polokwane City, especially for where they are on the log. But I don't think they'll be getting a lot from Orlando Pirates tomorrow in that regard. So I do think that it then creates this match. It poses this threat for us that they'll be playing for those long throws, they'll be playing for corners, they'll be playing for set pieces. And I think that's the way that Pirates is going to win this, if they will, is to make sure that we don't concede, first of all, those important kind of, set pieces, especially in critical phases of the game, because they'll be playing for that. They'll be playing for that last 5 minutes of the half, maybe try and catch us off in the first 5, maybe first 10. They'll be playing for that start of the second half and that last 10 in the second half as well, that 80th to 90th minute mark. So I think Orlando Pirates has got to be, switched on in those critical phases. I mean, we're going to cruise in this game, I do imagine, especially based on who I think should start. I think we'll be able to cruise in this game. But then the big question for us in this game is not whether or not we can keep the possession. Are we the better team? Have we got the better quality players? Of which the answer to those questions are yes, and resounding yes, of course. But I think the big question for us will be, can we be switched on in that critical phase? I think going back to the match in which we draw against them at Orlando Stadium, they scored around the 70th minute mark. We were kind of just cruising in the game, leading 1-0 in that game. And then, they get that goal and they just shut up shop and don't concede. And they're good at that sort of thing where they'll sit in front of their box. They'll sit with 3 in front of the back 4. The central midfielders will sit very close to the back 4, and then the wingers will tuck in as well, making it a 5 in front of a 4. And it's very hard to make your way through. You get really tight spaces to operate in. And which kind of leads me to who I think should play for Orlando Pirates tomorrow. I think, we're coming off of that massive thumping 6-0 win in the Nedbank Cup. And yeah, just, working off of that starting 11, I mean, it's hard to use that match as a basis for who should play in this game. But I do think that, there are a couple of players whom we already know a lot about, whom I think we should be bringing back into the starting 11. Because if you go back to the start of this season, the players that were sort of playing in that game are the guys that were, doing the job for us. They were doing the business for us. I think first of all, I think Mofokeng has got to come back in that left wing. Going back to the start of the season again, the matches that we won were very fluid. There was a lot of fluency in the way that we played our game, the passing patterns, the movement, and that kind of thing, which I think is going to be so important in this game. And, I love Hoto as our left wing in terms of his application and his running, and just tactically, I think he makes sense in some games in the way that he stretches the game and he gives us that width, and he's got that pace as well. He's got that work ethic, he's got that application, and I think he's a massive guy to have in the squad. But then I also do think that, there's these games where we need smart players who can carve up, spaces and can operate in those tight spaces and kind of do magic things in very little space to work in. And, I think it's no secret to us that in that left wing, the player that we do have, we don't have Lorch anymore, and that's a subject that maybe we should, close for now before Buccaneers come for my head again. But obviously, we don't have Lodge. He was the kind of player for us in that left wing, in that he was very smart. We had a smart player on the left, smart player through the center, and then we obviously had a Saleng, who's a wild card for us on the right with his pace and his goals and all of that. But I do think that when you're playing Mofokeng, who's growing in stature, I think in terms of, just his belief. Start of the season, he's already just amazing in the things that he did and the touches that he was showing. But I think even with the experience that he's been getting, with games that he's been getting in this league, and he's someone that obviously with every game is going to grow so rapidly just because of his age, and I think just because of his talent and his ceiling, he's just going to learn a lot from just one game. And I do think that he's a better player than we had for this reason or another, even just being more responsible, even though I thought he was a very responsible player to start with, coming into and being promoted into the first team was already showing those signs of maturity. But I do think that with more experience, with training with the first team for more than half a season now, actually more than half a season, because he already started training with the first team last season mid-season, I beg your pardon. And so I think he's one that if we want to be operating in those tight spaces, popping the ball off of the corner, playing those 1-2s, trying to carve up Polokwane City. I don't think Hoto is the one to go with on the left. The other person that I want to make a shout for, I think, is Maswanganyi, whom I think, obviously, he's been playing. He's not been sitting on the bench. But I think the criticism for him is that he's not been the same player. And maybe it's a bit of fatigue, but he's had a rest now. So hopefully we can see a better player than we've seen for most of this season now. He started really well, but then I think for the largest chunk, he's been really irresponsible. I think he's been losing the ball a lot of the time. I think the ball has been bouncing off of him. I think he's not been strong. He's not been holding his ground. He's not been firm. He's not been having that lower body strength and protecting that ball for us. It's almost as if you expect the ball to bounce off of him now. I was watching him in that Sundowns game. He's trying out things, which is great because he's that playmaker for us, but then you've got to protect it for us. You can't can't lose it in that middle of the park. And I think that's been my criticism for Maswanganyi, whom I think should play in this game. But I think for him, it's a matter of just upping his game more than making a shout for the coach to include him in the starting 11, because it's almost certain he's going to play tomorrow. And I also think Saleng should go back to playing that right wing for us. I think because you have two players that are not sort of like box players, box entry players in Maswanganyi and Mufukeng. So it'd be nice to have someone who's going to supplement in the box and try and get in that 6-yard box and try and finish things with alongside the striker, whether it be Mahopa, who's obviously the coach's favorite. But my shout would be to get Lepasa back. I think there's a lot that we can get from Lepasa, just in his sheer determination and his sheer force of will, and I think he'd been developing really well. There's obviously been a break and a stunt in that development that he's been having because the coach has been preferring this player or that player ahead of him. But I do think that Lepasa should be the one that gets in, just because of how he likes to get in behind. And if you've got people like Maswanganyi and Mufukeng as the sort of like the number 10s in the team from the left wing and through the center, and you've got Saleng coming in, I think Lepasa is also good in giving us that threat behind the Polokwane City defense, I beg your pardon, who do like to step forward, by the way. The fascinating thing about Polokwane City is that they're very daring and in their approach. They're very bold in the things that they do. They do step up, the two center backs. I think it's I forget their surnames. It's Nkaki and Nigani. Nkaki and Nigani, they are, center backs that like to step up. And yeah, one of the things that I actually observed about them, just sort of watching their matches back, is they also do like to take that risk of it. A lot of the time you'll see one of them following the number 10 into midfield, leaving a space behind them. I don't know what that is about. I think they've got just a man marking thing. I don't know whether it's a tactic or whatever, but it leaves a lot of space behind them, behind the centre back who does step out. And I think if you've got someone who's very good at attacking space like Lepasa, that would benefit from that sort of thing. And if you've got Saleng who likes to make those runs into that space through the centre, then you can benefit off of that. So I'd play Saleng and I'd play Lepasa, because I mean Mahopa is someone who's he smells where to be and that kind of thing, and he scores obviously unexpectedly. But I do think that we've got to have a constant threat behind them and through them and that kind of thing. And I'd go for Lepasa in this game. And then in the center of midfield, I think this is one of the games where I do not want to see Tim and Munari as a pair. I think those are very good players, with all due respect. And I think there's games where having their pairing is my go-to, or maybe Makehlin Makala, someone like that, alongside Tim or alongside Munari. Very responsible midfield, very experienced midfield. But I think it goes without saying that if you're trying to open up any team, if you're trying to, have those interplays and that kind of thing, and Ndlondlo is the go-to kind of player. I mean, he's another one who gets a lot of criticism from the Buccaneer fans in that he holds the ball too much, that kind of thing. Although I would like to sort of come out swinging, I have been throughout this whole season that he's been a lot better in that regard. In fact, for me, I think he's been the best midfielder, the best central midfielder at Pirates, just in his directness, in the way that he tries to feed that ball through the center and make those progressive passes. And at times he'll carry it and progress the ball in that way as well. So I think Ndlondlo is another one playing against, Polokwane City, who'll try and be dogged in the midfield and pick up man and that sort of thing, and man mark their man. So you need someone who can bring that spark where you can open someone up with a pass or whether by carrying it. And so I'd go for Ndlondlo in the midfield. And just going back to the Nedbank Cup game again, Talent Mbata is someone who's showing a lot of promise for me, as far as I've seen him so far, if that's a sentence that makes sense. But with what I've seen so far, I think he's someone who's showing a lot of potential. I love the fact that he's young in age. That's something I've been crying out for, because we've got to continue this team and got a lot of 30-year-olds in our midfield, and the signing of Mbata, even though it's a 6-month loan initially, with the option to sign, I think they agreed that kind of deal. They'll reassess, what he's like at the end of the season. Just, playing off of playing against, a sort of weaker opposition in the Nedbank Cup. He already showed a lot of promise for me. So I think maybe throwing him in this one would be interesting to see what he can offer for us. But I just like the fact that he's sort of also positive in his approach. He does go forward. He can turn in that midfield. He finds those pockets where he can receive behind sort of a line of pressure and turn and try and play forward. So he's someone that's interesting for me. However, I wouldn't mind if we started this one with someone like Munaria alongside Ndlondlo. And then left back, I think I wouldn't mind us playing with someone like Hoto on the left. But Maela would also not be bad. We might see BC come back in this one, but I'm not very much concerned about who's playing at centre back, because I do think that the crux of the game, sort of the battle of the game, will be in our midfield in front of their box. That's where the game's going to be won or lost for us. That's how we're going to score. But then, there's obviously that dogfight between Mapfumo, their striker, and our centre backs. And I think all three, Nda, Koki, and Sbisi, whoever starts, I'm okay with that. I think they can handle the threat of Polokwane City sort of going forward. And then on the right, I think we're going to be seeing Thabiso Munyane. If not, I'm not sure if he was injured, but if not, we're going to see his Bito in Thabiso Lubito, and no pun intended. But I think we're going to see Thabiso Lubito playing at right back if Thabiso Munyane is not available in this one, and I'm not mad at that. And then going to goalkeeper, and I sort of want to speak about Melusi Buthelezi, who I think will not play. Sipho Shaina will play, but just to sort of use that as a segue, I did want to just sort of, send my heartfelt support for Melusi Buthelezi. Sad news in finding that he's been hijacked and held hostage, I think around the East Rand in Johannesburg. Just speaks volume of the problem that we face in the country. I think it's a South African problem, this crime issue that we face, and it's always just sad when you hear of these things happening even to soccer players and daily happening to citizens in South Africa. It's just that ongoing battle that we've got as a country. And if Melusi Buthelezi watches this, just heartfelt support. Really grateful for the fact that he's still alive, his life has been spared. Really grateful to God for that. Would love to see him back. I know he's going to be going through a lot of trauma. These are very traumatic things that you go through that take a while to get over and that sort of thing. But I'm really hoping and praying for his journey, and would love to see him back and playing and pushing Sipho Shaina for that number one, and doing what he does best and what I imagine he loves most. Anyway, I do see us winning this one. I think maybe Polokwane City might be too daring tomorrow, playing at home, wanting maybe to get something. But I also do think that Orlando Pirates, we've got a lot of motivation with the last two results against Mamelodi Sundowns, even in the Nedbank Cup. But apart from that, it's a Herculean task that we've got ahead of us of trying to regain that second spot. We're quite far off at the moment. I think Stellenbosch is looking favourite for me to finish second. They've got a very strong team. SuperSport United obviously will always challenge that spot. Kaizer Chiefs is within the mix, even though we know they're not going to finish second, definitely. But Herculean task. We've got another sort of something to play for, just like last season. We've got something to play for in the league this time. And to start off with Polokwane City, I think we're going to take that one. It's not going to be easy, but I think the boys will do the business. Until the next episode of Talking Buccaneers, up the Mighty Bucks. Cheers. I know you're craving some more of Talking Buccaneers content. Well, I have great news for you. If you hit that subscribe button right now, you'll stay up to date with all our future content.